Hello, everybody. Tonight is the Dramatica Users Group meeting for Strangers on a Train, the 1951 Alfred Hitchcock movie. I will be stepping in for Chris Huntley, who is one of the co-creators of Dramatica Theory and usually runs the show. Thankfully, like I mentioned before, I actually watched the film, and so I have a pretty good idea of how things are laid out. But what we're going to do is go through the usual process that we go through, which is to look at story form and break it down by starting with the through lines first, and then working through the character dynamics, then the plot dynamics, and then finally we'll work through all the particular story points of the domain, concern, issue, and problem of usually the objective story. So the first thing I want to do is to put out the question there. What is Strangers on a Train all about? What is the objective story plot? Don't everybody jump in at once.
I would say it's about the two murders and the switching of the two murder plots on the train, and the aftermath that results. I'm not sure exactly how succinctly to word that. But
There's two men on a train. One of them proposes that they kill each other's significant others so that they can get away with it. Then following that, one of them takes it seriously and one of them doesn't. After killing the first victim, he then continually urges the second man to commit murder. It finally ends with a fight in an amusement park where one man who was going to frame him with a lighter he had taken for evidence is then killed, and the lighter falls out of his hand, and then the cops know it wasn't him.
Brilliant. All right.
Too long to.
This is super long, but that's it. So what would be the summarize that? GPT-4, how do I summarize that in 5 to 8 words?
when two strangers meet on a train and agree to swap.
On a train and agree.
When two strangers meet on the train and one is insane.
Yeah,
We'll
get into that. But yeah, two strangers meet on a train and agree to commit murder on behalf of the.
But he didn't agree. The other one didn't agree.
I know, that's why I put it in quotes. It was.
Oh.
Yeah, I did it on purpose.
Okay.
Okay. So it's something like that. We can all agree that it's two people meet on a train and there's some twist of fate. One guy's particularly really into it, and the other guy gets caught up into it. All right.
Or is fighting it.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the gist of it, right? So then who is the main character? What is the main character through line? First of all, who is it? And then what are his personal issues?
I think it's probably the Guy character, the tennis player. I don't really have like a great sense of what his personal issues would be, other than the personal issues that he's having with like his estranged or ex-wife, I guess, or current wife. I wasn't quite sure. I think it's his current wife, right?
And yeah. fitting in with the political world of his new wife to come.
So Guy Haynes is the tennis star. His promiscuous wife won't divorce him. And he wants to marry Ann Morton, who's the daughter of a U.S. senator, right?
Yes.
Does everybody agree that Guy is the main character, or do we think it's somebody else?
Well, the other one is a perfect antagonist, in my opinion.
Let's hold off on that.
Okay.
Do you guys have any idea for the main character? Or are we all pretty?
I agree that he's the main character.
Great. All right, and his personal issues, promiscuous one, won't divorce him. And he has an affair with Anne Morton, the senator's daughter. Right? Promiscuous.
More than an affair, they're planning a life together.
Couldn't you argue that Guy is steadfast though?
Oh, wow, we're not even there yet. Right now, we're just looking at the different through lines. So we have like the objective story through line here. And first thing you want to do is break down just the 4 different through lines that we're looking at, and then we'll go back over the different plot dynamics. So in that case, who is the influence character and why?
I think we're not supposed to talk about him, but I think it's Bruno.
Okay. Bruno, let's see. So his name is Bruno Anthony, right? Bruno Anthony. Robert Walker. Bruno Anthony. All right. Whoops. And what is his story about? What's going on with Bruno?
He wants to get rid of his father.
Yeah.
He wants to get rid of his father. Are there any personal issues that are challenging to Guy?
Yeah, he's struggling with untreated mental illness, and he also has some substance abuse issues that he talks about in the beginning.
Yeah, because he wants to get rid of his father thing is probably his role in the objective story. You know, when we talk about who the protagonist is and who the antagonist is. So him wanting to get rid of his father is probably more objective story, whereas this is probably more the subjective influence, subjective challenge that's challenging Guy to kind of grow out of his own justifications why he's doing the things that he's doing.
Okay.
Are there any other options for obstacle character, or I'm sorry, influence character?
Could it be a trade-off sometimes with the father, the girl's father?
The senator?
Yeah.
Maybe Anne Morton could be in there.
You know, at times, I'm just wondering if there's a trade-off
Or-
sometimes, handoff or whatever it's called.
Well, I mean, do you think there's a handoff, or are you just throwing that out there? Like, is there evidence that the senator is there because of his belief system and the way that he's approaching conflict and resolving it, that is somehow challenging to Guy and forces him to look at his own way of doing things and growing out of his way of doing things?
Not
Not
so
really.
much for me, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much a objective
A
character,
guardian. Yeah. Okay.
something like that. And then what about Anne? What is Anne's challenge? Because the influence character or the obstacle character is supposed to be there, and if the main character had never met them before, probably would still be doing things the way that they did at the beginning of the story. Right? Like, how is Anne actually challenging him?
I don't know if she is as much. I could maybe see her being a little bit within the relationship story, but I don't really see her so much, I guess, as the influence character.
Okay.
Maybe the sister.
The sister. Well, we don't want to
Maybe
go.
she's the sister
like,
might be the antagonist. Okay, sorry about that.
no worries. Yeah. Yeah, you just want to keep it to somebody that has a very unique way of approaching things that is there and somewhat resembles what Guy is going through, but is doing it from a different angle. And because of that externalization of it, that's why he would grow out of, or at least deal with whatever sort of issues he has going on. And I think it's really clear in the beginning, he even says, hey, I mean, pretty much like you and I are both alike. We got the same issues, right? You got the same problem I do, and I've got the solution for it. Just he has a different way of going about it than, which is the definition of influence character. All right, then what is the relationship story?
Kind of fake friends to like enemies, something more like that, I guess.
Okay, so then this would be between Guy and Bruno, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it is an Alfred Hitchcock thriller. I'm not sure if there's a lot of heartfelt.
I thought the relationship was doing the murders. Like it was revolving around like doing the murders.
Okay.
Like the crisscross.
And how is that different from the objective story? I'm not saying you're wrong, but how is that different?
Well, I thought the objective story was a little different. Well, I mean, I think the plot is there, but I personally don't think that's what Hitchcock is trying to say with his objective story. But anyway, I'll just, I mean, I don't know. I kind of saw their relationship as physical, like even in the end, they get in this fight at the end, fisticuffs and on the Ferris wheel. And I don't know. And that could be objective story too. I could be getting the two confused, but I felt like their relationship was very like do the murders, and I don't know.
How would you, so then how do you see the objective story through line? I mean, do you see it different from this?
Well, I don't see it different from that. I see it more as like about understanding humanity's true nature and capacity for murder, thus carrying through all of these things. That's kind of how I see it, but I see things a bit differently. So
yeah, I mean, that would be kind of like the whole thing. I'm not saying that you're wrong about that. The plot is like very specifically, who's going for it, and how does it all end up at the end. But there is something interesting going on that's because the relationship story is something that's separate from the objective story. And it's interesting that this is about murder, but then the actual doing of the murder is perhaps in the relationship story. Unless anybody sees any other sort of relationship that grows over time that has some kind of meaningful impact on the story, that would be a part of the story form.
I guess it could be a little. Oh, sorry. I guess it could be a little bit with Guy and Morton becoming a little bit more honest, but that's kind of stretching it. I feel like, anyways. I don't think there's a whole lot there. Like what you're saying. Like it's not really. Seems like it's focused on that, but.
And Lloyd, were you going to say something too?
I was actually going to ask a question. When it comes to relationship stories, we use the word grow, but that can also be used in terms of grow apart, correct? Mm-hmm. So in this instance, it's not necessarily a grow closer, it's a grow apart. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's always going to grow one direction or another, and it can meander back and forth as it goes. But at the end, you'll see that it's not going to be in the same spot. It's going to have, I mean, it might come around to the same area, but now things have changed.
Right.
Yeah, direction of it's always going to be something, and that can either be growing closer or growing further apart.
And I'm just trying to wrap my head around the way the dual terminology is, like, learning that antagonist doesn't necessarily mean villain.
Yeah, and also the purpose of this class is like if you whatever questions you have as you're going through it, on your own. If something comes up in this class and you're like, oh, I always wondered this, feel free to ask. Like you can interrupt me anytime and ask, because I guarantee other people here have the same sort of questions or will get a lot of value out of it. So I don't see an issue with that. So before we do the plot, so I think this is pretty good for the four through lines. I think this is pretty clear as to where we're coming from. Nothing too complex. Let's do the main character dynamics down here. first. That's how Chris does it. And go through the resolve, the growth, the approach, and the mental sex, which Chris calls problem solving style. Okay. Put that in there. So for the resolve, it's either going to be changed or steadfast. So for Guy, how do we see him? You compare the end of the story with the beginning. Has he changed his resolve or has he remained steadfast?
I mean, this was hard for me, and I don't know if I really have an answer, but he feels a little bit different, I guess, at the end. Like maybe he's being a little more proactive or something. But that was really because he felt a little bit passive at the beginning and then moving a little bit more towards, but it felt very subtle to me. So I could definitely be convinced on other ideas.
I felt he was steadfast because the influence character kept trying to get him to take part in this, and he refused more and more and more.
Okay, but how does he remain steadfast? No, without referring to the influence character.
Oh, okay. Isn't he the same as he was when he went into the story?
I mean, you'd have to give examples of.
I do have one example, but I'll save it for later.
Okay.
For if anybody else wants to go, I guess.
Okay, I think we're waiting for you. There's this silence.
Okay. Well, you always hear about like looking for like bookends, and this story definitely has a bookend with the very opening versus the very end gag, which is like the person on the train. And it could just be a joke, but it's like the guy on the train's like, "Hey, blah blah blah, are you that guy?" And they just change seats. So that felt like a change to me, but
I agree. And I think that Bruno Anthony's optical character didn't change, which kind of means that the main character had to change also. So I agree that the main character's changed.
That's an interesting, yeah, I see that.
That's like classic bookends of all time. It's like he's the same exact thing, and now he's running away from it, as opposed to like, hey, I guess I'll just go along with it here. Right?
Am I jumping ahead by thinking that he was avoidance and then pursuit, and that constitutes the chain?
Keep that in mind until we get to the actual elements. The way Chris likes to do it, which I can see the value in it, is to just go each of the dynamics piece by piece and ask the different parts. It could possibly be, but because there's so many other things that come into play with that, it might end up being in a place where those don't even factor in as being the change elements, right? He might have his objective drives that are a part of those elements, but I'd like to wait to get there until we get down to here, like where we have the domain concern and issue. I also think too, I think the tennis match, even the guy says like, oh, he used to just like kind of wait around. Like they basically tell his whole character. He used to kind of wait around and let for things to happen. And now he's really going for it. So, but I think Levi's pointing out the bookend stuff is pretty clear. And then Teresa's right. So like the steadfast of, so if whoever is the changed character, then the other one would be the steadfast character. I think Bruno only gets more crazier, right?
Yeah, that's really a good point. Excellent.
Yeah, you don't want him to be the same, right? So even though it's steadfast, it's not like he's the same. He's getting insane.
Yeah.
He goes through it. And it's virtue of his steadfastness that is what ends up driving Guy to finally have to go take action and do something about it. Like even walking by police officers that are there like waiting for him. All right, well, usually Chris likes to skip the growth, but I'll just throw this in here just because we're going through. And that one is when it comes to the changed resolve, whether or not Guy is growing out of something or growing into something? And does anybody have any sort of thoughts on that?
My instinct says start. It feels like moving from passive to active or more active.
Okay. So then, yeah, start is kind of stepping up to the plate and moving into something, whereas stop is he's kind of his own worst enemy. Would be the stop version of it. Is everyone okay with start? All right, we can leave this one for here. I just like to bring it up just so you understand where it's coming from. Okay, so then approach. And this one is doer or beer, which is, does Guy prefer to solve problems externally, change the world around him, or does he prefer to change himself in terms of when it comes time to solve his personal issues? Nobody.
I could go. I'm just waiting because I feel like I'm just saying everything. But
Okay.
I could see him being a beer. At least comparatively to Bruno. Bruno feels like very doer. Like, I'm gonna go kill him, even though you didn't even we didn't even confirm this kind of thing.
That
I know
is
that's kind of comparing it.
that's a very good point, is that the crazy one is really a doer. I mean, and so that gives the clue. Good point.
Well, how does what are Guy's personal issues? Because he's also going to be either a protagonist or antagonist involved in all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
I think I actually think he's a beer.
Okay.
Even though he physically does stuff, like he physically plays tennis. I don't think that's what, no, I guess I'm going to say the opposite. I'm sorry. I think he's a doer. Apologies. I got my terms confused. I don't know. I guess I kind of saw him as a little bit like he held back from doing the murder, but he kind of wanted to initially. And so I think he's a doer that's holding himself back. I don't know. Also he was, I don't know. I just saw him calling everybody and like, I don't know if that, I don't know. But then he was playing tennis and I don't know, maybe he changed from beer to doer because he was more aggressive with the tennis, but he was like a sports person, and so I kind of saw him as a doer.
Yeah, he's like a famous tennis star.
Yeah.
How about like in the beginning, which is before a lot of the stuff really happens? How is he going about resolving the issues with his wife?
Oh yeah, he was very physical with her in the booth too. He was like, yeah,
And why was he going there?
because he was trying to get a divorce.
Yeah. So this is important to think about, is passive and active are not doer beer. The trend is, or the cultural thing is, that beers are passive and doers are active. But you can have passive doers who are having issues because of their passiveness, because of what they're passively doing, as opposed to somebody who's like an active beer who would be very manipulative, insane, very passive aggressive. That would be like a nice, easy version of an active beer, somebody who's passive aggressive. But somebody who's really super manipulative would be a really active beer. Any thoughts about that with doer or beer?
Yeah, I feel like I could see either way. I don't really feel too strong on either. I just felt like, of the two of them, I felt like the influence character, the Bruno character, was more of a doer. But I guess he could be, if you're just looking at the personal issue, I could see him maybe being a B, or just kind of going with what he's done. I don't know. It gets kind of confusing for me with those sometimes. So
And
Well,
I also in the past, I know that it comes up, well, okay, so if the main character is the doer, then the obstacle character is supposed to be a beer. Not really, doesn't really work that way. And obstacle characters are not doers or beers. They're just there to challenge the main character to deal with their doer or beerness. Sometimes you can make that as, but when that starts to happen, then you're not really looking at their influence or their challenge to the main character. Then you're starting to think of them as a character, which then bleeds into their role in the objective story. So that's why I try to avoid, if I'm ever doing something, I always try to avoid thinking of the influence character as either a doer or a beer. Because most of the time you're thinking of them in terms of their role in the objective story. Wow. Everything just went dark.
yeah.
I still see that.
I'm also thinking about the party, when they had the party, and
Okay.
the main character was the person who physically got him out of the party.
Oh, okay. That's a good one. Or when he approaches him.
Yeah, like he held back until Anne was like, you got to get him out of here. But then he was all like, let's go.
Excellent. All right. All right.
I think there was some part where he like gets in the car like right away too, that felt kind of doery.
Away from him. Yeah, for sure.
Well,
All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
I always saw him just going and giving the gun back to the guy more of a beer thing than a doer thing.
You know, physically giving a gun to somebody, I
You know,
guess would be
rather than give it to the police, or I mean, the guy committed a murder with it.
sure, but if he's like physically giving it to somebody, and that's his approach to solve the problem, that's a physical activity. He's like, he gives him the gun when it's like he's gonna kill him. Why would he give him the gun? That's a doer thing. Whereas a beer, he might put on some sort of personality or put on airs or something to kind of manipulate him to get something that he wants out of him.
Okay.
But
Okay.
he goes there to tell dad, hey, this is what's going on with your son. That would be another
Beer thing. I mean, a doer thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I
All right.
accept it. I'm just saying it's interesting.
Sure. And we can always come back to it if we need to. So let's look at the mental sex or the problem-solving style, which would be male or female, or the problem-solving style would be linear or holistic. Thoughts?
I don't really feel strongly, but I'm getting the sense more of linear. But again, I don't feel strongly.
So when it comes to Guy, how does he problem solve? Is he something comes up and is he looking to shift the balance of things and the relationship between things, or does he see a problem and he goes and solves it, like cause and effect sort of thing?
I mean, he goes to like confront the wife. There are a few moments of where it felt kind of linear, but I don't know. It wasn't like I said, strong.
I'll jump in. He was thinking, should he go talk to the cops and explain his situation? And he thought through the logic of it and how it would be hard for him to prove that he was not in cahoots with the other guy. So he got afraid of the logic of how it would play out.
Or even, that's a great example, or even he thought, oh, I'll just go tell them and they'll know. And then Bruno's like, are you really thinking of think of how that's going to look? And he's like pointing out all the different relationships between it. But I think that's a great example of linear he eventually saw the logic of it, like, oh yeah, if I go do this, I'm an accomplice to murder one way or the other. And I would say also it's Alfred Hitchcock, so actually it's Raymond Chandler, I think, right? Is one of the screenwriters. That's a cheat way of doing it. 1951, that's another thing. I mean, that's another cheat way of doing it. Because certainly I think Rear Window is much more female mental sex. But
It
has a
was based on a book written by a woman.
the was?
I believe so.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I do think it's more linear, but I don't think it's crisply linear. I
Okay.
think there were some, I think it's closer to the middle, but I do think it's more on the linear side. But I do think, if I remember on Wikipedia, it said it was based on a screenplay of a book called Strangers on the Train, or maybe it was a novella or something. And I believe that was written by a woman. I can look it up right now and double check.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes that lines up with gender, but not necessarily. I mean, especially it's much more common for female authors to write male mental sex stories than it is for male authors to write female, for sure. All right, so we got changed. I think start. And
Tim, can I
then-
ask you a question?
Definitely.
Okay, so you gave us an interesting gem before about how you don't apply the doer or the beer, the approach to the influence character. Is that the same thing for the mental sex as well? I mean, I know you did say just now that Bruno said, "Well, have you really thought about all the different things?" But you were just saying that not to apply, not to be that one's one and one's the other. You were just sort of sussing it out a little bit.
Yep. And I realized that as I was saying it. So I would still hold true to you really shouldn't look at the mental sex of the obstacle character. This would be the thing where it's like, you can kind of sort of see that on the other end, and usually there's a balance between the two. Like if one is linear, the other one's holistic. So I probably shouldn't have used that as a way of, backtracking into the male mental sex. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't think, because there's lots and lots of examples of stories where both are linear or both are male mental sex. Probably more so than they are balanced. So I would definitely try not to think about that. So
Right.
thank you for pointing that out. I realized it, but I was hoping I could get past it. I was like, oh shoot, I just said not to do that, and now I'm saying it the other way. But yeah, you should probably not do that.
Except one step further. So the main character resolve is, change or steadfast, but the influence character is the opposite. Yes?
That one is because change doesn't mean anything unless it has the steadfast in order to get it. The doer is strictly where the domain is, so it's not really based on where the obstacle or influence character is coming from. The linear has a different thing that it does to the story form. Certainly it's easier to show how linear is working when shown in context of holistic, like if somebody else has the holistic way of looking at things. But behind the scenes, these are all doing things to manipulate the story form and to flip things around and do all that kind of stuff. So this one, it's really important to know that, because that has a huge impact on the order of things. And this does too, but it's more about the kind of the operating system of the main character. So it doesn't need this, right? Like this is like pre-conscious, because this is Mike, right, Michael?
Yes.
Yeah, pre-conscious, right? Like in mind, you have memory, pre-conscious, subconscious, and conscious.
Mm-hmm.
So like the male or mental sex is in the pre-conscious, so it's before there's ever any kind of thought. So it doesn't need the holistic for it to make sense, if that makes sense. Like it already filters and changes the world the way that the main character's the audience is looking at the world. So it doesn't need the holistic to be able to do that. This one is in the conscious part of it. So then you need the steadfastness of the other to give meaning to the change.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then really, to be honest, like doer beer, all that's doing is choosing the domain of the main character. It's another way to look at it, because wherever the domain of the main character is, then what they're dealing with personally on a personal level first, you know, if it's in universe or physics, they're dealing with external stuff. And so the first step to dealing with that would be externals. So then that's why it's doer, right? Whereas if it's psychology or mind, they're kind of in that internal domain, and their first mode of dealing with any kind of problem is to be. So that's where you're getting this. And then
Great.
this one is just a relationship between the main character and the objective story. So it's a really great question, because you really shouldn't, like, I don't know, what would be the only one I can think of for sure is the How to Train Your Dragon with Hiccup and his dad. Both are male mental sex, like up and down. I don't know of any female mental sex characters in that film.
So when you're building your characters, you're not trying to make one a doer and one a beer. It's just right. You're just deciding what's my main character's trait. You know what's him, and it doesn't have to affect any. And you're not, because that's what we're doing here. Like, because right now we're reverse engineering, but when we're building, it's not important to be like, well, you know, the main character's linear, so I got to make someone else holistic. Got it.
110,000%. Because all we're doing here with these decisions is you're just backtracking into the story form, because that's what you want. So like if you're writing something, you're creating something, me telling you, okay, this is the domain, you really don't need to think about it, right? Because you'll just get it from the domain. The male or female is usually you as the author. What are you most comfortable with? So you just pick the one that's the one that you're attracted to. And then the change or set fast that's an important one to be able to judge against what the other person is doing. And then this one is just going to end up being the relationship story, or I'm sorry, the relationship between objective story and main character. So these are great dynamics to show the relationship between things, which is what dynamics are. And they're good starting off points, and they're nice because they're binary choices, at least here, the way that they're set up. But yeah, I would not choose, okay, if I have male, then I have to make the other one female, or if I have doer, the other one's beer. I definitely wouldn't do that. And it's kind of like, you know, like over the last 10 years or so, it's been a little laziness, because it's like everybody gets a second hand. They're like, oh yeah, because there's a doer, the other one has to be a beer. Oh, I just got a message from Chris.
What's your favorite part of the cake so far? Chocolate?
Yes, there are people. I've already through the main care. Oh, he's calling me. I'm not going to call him. I'm going to answer. Hold on.
I do have a little question though, I guess. If say you have two, what would be doer, like a main character and an obstacle character. If the doer, or if the obstacle character, let's say, is like in the internal, you know, like they're in psychology or something, or they're in mind, would they be like, how would you think about if they're still a doer in the context of the story, or would you just kind of not really think of it that way? Does that make sense?
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, so like let's say you have your main characters in universe and your obstacle characters in mind, and but like if they're both doer characters, does it matter if the obstacle character is in mind, or would they just be acting more like a doer that's dealing with those kind of problems? Or
Like, don't even, that's what I'm saying, don't even think
Yeah.
about if they're two doers, because then
Okay.
you're like, what? And then it's like, okay, so then are they their main character in their own story form? Then
Yeah.
maybe be a doer, and then you have two different story forms. Don't even think about it. It really is
Okay.
kind of like laziness, where it's like over time, because we've been doing this for like 3 decades. People that have been doing it for so long are just like, oh yeah, let's do a beer, and it's easier just to move on to the next thing. But from a practical standpoint, I definitely wouldn't always make them all balance out,
Okay.
right? Okay. Yeah, and then Chris can't make it, so I'm on my own. So here we go. See if I can help everybody figure this out. All right, so plot dynamics. So now we did all the character stuff. Now we're going to do objective story. This was main character dynamics. These are the objective story. So action or decision. What are the major plot points? Are they actions that force decision, or decisions that force action?
Well, I think the first major plot turn was the first murder,
Okay.
which feels very action. I mean, and then the last with the scene with the carousel also felt like an action. And trying to think of other possible turning points, might have been like in the middle where he's like choking the one gal. I don't know if that would constitute a turning point or not, but
Party choke out.
yeah.
So those all sound like actions.
I think it's action because at the very beginning, they only meet because, well, I guess it could be decision depending, but they meet on the train, and that action of them meeting on the train is then what eventually leads to the whole discussion of the decision, and then about the murdering and the crisscross and stuff.
Right. And then the first murder forces him to make a choice of like helping him out, right?
Do I call the police? Do I not?
Isn't party choke out the middle?
It's either maybe the middle or closer to the. I don't remember exactly where it falls chronologically.
Oh, no, I know what this one is here. This has to be when he goes to tell dad, right?
That could be.
It goes to tell dad, but Bruno is there. Am I right about that? I think I'm right. This would be the first one, right? Initial story driver. This is the second one. This is the midpoint. This is the fourth. And then the carousel apprehension, right, is the last one. Does that sound right?
Something like that.
Everybody good with action?
I'm good with action. I just wonder if something around the tennis game
Mhm.
Had to do with the action and maybe a driver, or maybe something led up to the tennis game, but that seemed to be a big part of it. And that then they waited till the third sat to get the taxi and kind of do all those things so they could slip through. So I just wasn't sure where that would fit in, but I do think it's action driver.
Okay.
I think that all could maybe be part of the same beat.
Could be like a series of actions, right?
Because it all felt like it was all connected, like as like a plan or something that they were
It
trying
was
to.
the race to the island.
Yeah.
All right. How about the story limit, which is either option lock or time lock? And I'm okay. You don't have to explain.
I think option lock. I mean, I don't think there's really a ticking clock. I mean,
No, and the options would be the different ways that Guy can keep it a secret before he eventually has to face Bruno one-on-one, right? Like, I'm gonna go to the police. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, maybe I'll just kind of hang out. Okay, no, maybe I'll go tell dad. Oh, that didn't work. Well, eventually, he eventually has to face him one-on-one. And then also all the clues, the cops are starting to put the pieces together. People are getting closer and closer to it spatially, which then amps up the tension to when it feels like they're running out of time at the tennis match, when really it's just because everything's closed in. All right.
I love that scene. I hadn't
Maybe-
seen the movie before. It was I was very tense. I was like, dang man, he better hurry up.
I felt like everybody since then has copied that. Because it was like, oh, this was magical. This is actually
You're
nice.
talking about on the merry-go-round?
No, the tennis match, that it was taking so
Oh.
long, and the way it was shot with the
Yeah.
the hit, the strike, just the
Right.
beat of it. It was very it was great. It's just the tension was high.
This
Yes.
was earlier in it, but my favorite shot in the movie was like when Bruno's like sitting in the crowd and just like looking straight forward while like everybody's like looking back and forth.
Yeah,
Just
that
such a classic Hitchcock kind of shot.
It was brilliant.
All right, coolio. All right, how about the outcome? Success or failure?
So I feel like this goes back to who's the protagonist and antagonist, but I kind of have a thought that Bruno might be the protagonist and Guy might be the antagonist. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Okay, so pursuit and avoid or prevent.
Because it felt like the one that was really going after the I want to kill and get this whole plot going on really was the Bruno character to me. And then I guess, but that could maybe change towards the end, because I think that sometimes happens in stories. If the main character isn't the protagonist, they kind of shift to being that towards the end. Then that throws into question what the actual goal of the story is. So I don't know if I really have like an answer, but it kind of felt like if that's the case, it might be a failure outcome, but it kind of depends on all that.
Okay,
Well, the woman getting killed and maybe she could have been saved kind of gives a failure mode.
I'm
certainly-
gonna, I'll
some-
make the argument that that it's failure and that Bruno is the protagonist because he just wants his father dead the entire time. And I think that the antagonist Guy is not only having problems with avoiding like the murder, but he's having problems with avoiding like how to deal with his ex-wife. Like there are a lot of elements of his character that fall into that before he becomes proactive.
Okay. So certainly there is some inequity that happens at the beginning of the story when they meet. And then the outcome is whether or not that's been resolved at the end.
Well, Guy is free of his wife.
His wife, yes, for sure.
Well, he's free of her, I guess, really early on, but then it's all like the aftermath, I guess, of whether or not he's going to be arrested. And yeah.
But remember the plot or the objective story is two strangers meeting on a train and they're, what they're working out in order to murder the other's significant other on behalf of them. Is that still an issue at the end? Is that still going on? That would be a failure.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'm thinking of outcome.
Well,
So you're saying,
the father is still alive, so it wasn't a success, if that was the agreement.
I think it was a success because the problem has resolved itself. Even though it didn't resolve itself in Bruno's favor, the problem has resolved itself. Like they're no longer, I don't know, they're no longer in conflict, I guess. All I know, Jim, you're gonna hate me for saying this. Well, not hate me, but all I know is when I watched it, I felt like it was a triumphant ending, not a virtue. I didn't feel it where I feel it for virtuous endings.
Okay, well, that's fair.
I felt that it was more triumphant, but I can't give you more than that. Sorry.
Well, that's fine because these two work together. So for the story judgment, is Guy, did he resolve his personal issues, or is he miserable at the end and still?
I think it's a good ending.
Yeah, right. So definitely become good, right? Resolves his issues.
I wouldn't say it's triumphant. It just felt it was a relief that he was able to prove himself, not that he was set up. But you know, he wasn't. I mean, I don't know. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt it was just like he was able to prove his innocence, but that's not really what the point of the movie was.
Well, what was the point of the movie? Let's talk about characters that aren't the main character or the obstacle character. Who's a character that's not one of those?
Like maybe one of the cops, or maybe one of or is it Marion? I can't remember.
Did it end in success or failure for the cops?
I mean, I think it'd be success for them, right?
Okay.
I think about the ladies on the couch at the party. It would definitely have ended successfully for the ladies on the couch, with Bruno passing away, because he was a big problem for them.
Okay. That's a really obscure objection. How about some other?
Well, wouldn't it be a failure for the cop in that he killed an innocent man?
What's that?
Well, the cop, when he shot at the
That's right.
merry-go-round, this innocent man was killed.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. That was like, what?
That's Hitchcock, right? So it seemed that it was a failure for the cop, and that an innocent man was killed.
Sure.
Yeah, but they caught the bad guy.
Yeah, but they got the bad guy. How about
Yeah.
What's Anne's thing? Anne wants to know, like, whether or not this guy actually killed, right?
It's success.
Success for her. What about the little sister, right?
Yeah.
So it can be easier sometimes to look at
What's interesting is that he denied it to the end, and the cop was believing him, you could see, but then it was at his death when his hand opened up and that evidence was there, that revealed the truth. That was just kind of interesting.
So if he didn't have it, or if he managed to go hide it on the island, I think that's a failure.
Yeah.
And then Guy gets locked up.
So then, are you saying, like, basically the point of the movie is that Guy wanted to be free of his wife so that he could be with Anne, and that Bruno grilled him and says, "This is what your goal is. Your goal is to be free of your wife so you can be with Anne. I have a plan for you to how to do it." And so even though he was reluctant to do the plan, at the end of the day, it was a successful plan. Is that what your guys are arguing?
I didn't think of it that way, but that's a really great objective way to explain it. And it does kind of make it a little bit twisted.
So just to be clear, and this I guess is not just looking at this movie, but like you would try to define success and failure as like is the initial inequity still present in the world of the story? Is that a good way to think of it?
That's one way to think of it. Also, think
Okay.
of the main character or the obstacle character, because then you're not getting caught up in any sort of subjective stuff that's going on.
Mhm.
And I guess no morality judgment, is just the activity, success or failure.
It's like the way Michael just put it, it is true. Like he got rid of his wife. I guess that's what he wanted anyways. But and didn't have to pay for it.
Right.
So then if you look at this, pursuit isn't only just I'm pursuing stuff, but also being pursued. So he had cops after him, he has people looking at him everywhere he goes, leave me alone, leave me alone. He's being pursued, and then what's his face doesn't want him to be able to run away. You know, so he's doing everything he can to prevent that from happening.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say success. I was actually surprised. I thought it was going to end the other way. Oops, that didn't work. All right. So we have action, option lock, success, good. And we have changed, start, doer, and mail. So let's look at assigning the 4 through lines in terms of the 4 different domains. So I will use the manual version of this to keep it Dramatica pure, and we will go right to this here. All right. It has the older terminology. Everybody knows I like the newer ones, but just for now, we'll go with this. Situation, activity, manipulation, fixed attitude. We have 4 through lines. We have the objective story, which is something to do about 2 strangers meeting on a train. We have Guy, who's the main character, tennis pro, has got some wife issues. We have some crazy dude, Bruno, who wants to kill his dad. And then we have the relationship between the 2 of them, which is sort of like convenient friends that then turn into some sort of enemies by the end. So, and the only rule is that the main character and the influence character through line will be diagonally across from each other, and then the objective story and the relationship story would be diagonally from each other. So what would be the best combination of this for what we're looking at in Strangers on a Train?
I guess I would go objective story and activity.
Okay. So then the plot is all the physical stuff, the killing, strangulation, the investigation, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is a thriller after all.
Okay. Which would then put the, all right, did you have any other through lines in mind?
For the other pieces, well, I guess, you know, you're the main character would be situation. You're kind of looking at it through Guy's eyes of being stuck in this weird situation. He's stuck in a marriage. He's stuck in this weird grasp of Bruno. Bruno is pretty good for fixed attitude. For his I'm trying to think what and then the relationship is manipulation between how Bruno is trying to manipulate Guy. So for me, I guess that would be the way I'd work it.
Okay. So Michael's was main character, situation, objective story, activity. So then the relationship would be in manipulation, and the influence character would then be in fixed attitude. Which works nice because the main character is a doer. So like I said earlier, because Guy is a doer, he would either have to be in situation or activity.
I think that the objective story through line is actually in psychology instead of activity, but I agree with the main character being in the situation and the obstacle character being in the fixed attitude. I think that the objective story is in manipulation because the other characters outside of the duo are also looking at keeping secrets and maybe manipulating the situation a little bit. And like, there's some things about like, I thought, wasn't there a talk about with the senator, how he couldn't get involved, but I don't know, he thought about getting involved, but he couldn't because of codes of conduct and stuff. Like as a senator, there were certain codes of conduct. And then I'm going to bring it back to the ladies on the couch again, the one who got strangled, but they were like all in. I'm like, yeah, let's plan the murders of our husband. And,
That's actually a good, okay, I could see that.
So anyway, so that's what I think it is.
Yeah, I'm kind of in between both activity and manipulation as well, and it's sometimes hard for these kind of twisty thriller kind of stories, I feel like, to separate them.
Well, also it's kind of hard to tell what's the relationship story and what's the objective story, especially in this one, right? It's not like it's a romance and it would be easy to kind of separate them out. They are co-conspirators, but then also there's some sort of relationship. But I think everybody likes Guy in Situation, and at least we can agree on that, which is huge. So that's good. We'll keep with that because yeah, he's crazy. He's got a very fixed attitude, mindset, and just because he said sure, he's like, cool, we're friends. Now I'm going to go do this, and he's like fixated on it and can't let it go. So I think that works great. And then so it's about if anybody has any specific things to add to either the way Michael sees it or the way that Teresa brought it up. I know Levi's kind of in between. I don't know if anybody else had any thoughts on it. The way would then be to look at, again, characters that aren't Guy or Bruno. So like Anne would be one.
I mean, there's a little bit of like understanding and stuff going on with like figuring out what's happening and stuff like that from some of the side characters. Again, I don't know if really the side characters are as concerned with like developing a plan, playing a role.
I don't think so. The cop just goes and shoots that carousel guy.
So a lot of the manipulation stuff seems like it fits a little bit more in what they're both doing with each other, but I don't know. It's a little hard.
So is the question if the overall story is activity? Is that what the question is?
Right. So now we're looking at the two through lines, the objective story through line and the relationship story through line, and trying to see where the source of conflict is coming from. So in the objective story, if it's physics or if it's an activity, then it's them, the things that everybody is doing is causing the problem in the story. And if they just stop doing that, then there wouldn't be any sort of issues. If it wasn't
the cop killing that carousel guy.
Hold off on that.
Sorry.
So that's a perfect example. How hard was it for the cop to shoot the guy?
Oh, easy.
It's super easy. It's not a problem.
Okay.
So you want to look for the source of conflict, like what is the author setting up as the inequity and what gets resolved. So if there were a lot of physical problems between everybody, then that would be the objective story, would be an activity or physics. In psychology, that would seem to say that the way people are thinking about things and sort of the stuff that they're putting together is problematic. And if that gets resolved at the end, then that would be the objective story. And then vice versa. So then the relationship story, how does the relationship story get resolved? Is it through stopping way people are thinking, or is it through activities?
Activity is what I would assume. But if it gets resolved there, does that mean that that's where the problem exists?
That would be the source of conflict. Like, so for Guy,
Okay.
the problem is super hot new girlfriend. I have this wife. How does that get resolved? I'm guilty. I was in the wrong place at the right time. I was in the right place at the right time. That gets resolved. Bruno does not resolve his attitude mindset. So then looking at the plot versus the relationship story, how does the objective story get resolved?
So the wife
Bruno.
is removed and Bruno gets killed.
So the wife gets removed and Bruno is killed.
And the killer is caught.
How does that resolve the objective story though? For the cop.
No.
Well, they catch the
More murder.
criminal.
Or how about this? The whole carousel.
The
blows
power
up.
struggle is over.
So the whole carousel blows up and everything goes fine, which is like, what the heck? It's crazy. It's really cool. Is it resolved?
No, it's not resolved
that's
until
true.
the secret. Yeah, it's all about the secrets. It's not resolved until the secret kind of reveals itself, the thing he's manipulating, the thing he's hiding. And I think about the wife too. His wife at the beginning was super manipulative, right? Like the reason why she kind of things got going was because she manipulated him into, I'm going to keep marrying you and you're going to say this baby is mine and stuff like that.
But isn't that found evidence? They find they discovered the evidence, or you're saying they prove the manipulation?
Yeah, like if you have somebody who's manipulating things behind the scenes, once you see, oh, that was a manipulation, he didn't really kill his wife, then that is resolved, objectively speaking.
Yeah.
So it's not finding the evidence, it's finding the evidence of the manipulation.
Yeah, because you're looking for the source. Like finding the evidence would be like Raiders of the Lost Ark or some sort of adventure thing where it's like it's impossible to go through all the different trials and physically make your way through the different rooms to be able to get the answer. I mean, they had the guy, you know, the cool thing of the old Arnie going underneath the carousel. But really, he didn't have a hard time getting there. It took forever to get there. You want to look at what has been thrown out of whack. So in other words, the story starts when they meet each other. So what is that story? Is that an activity thing or is that a manipulation thing?
We could start when it starts manipulating.
So how hard was it for him to kill Guy's wife?
Pretty easy.
Crazy. She didn't even scream. Like activity physics are physically difficult to work your way through. Climbing a mountain or doing any kind of psychology story. What the heck? How am I going to get my way out of this? The other thing would be the growth with the cheating way of doing it, which is why Chris usually skips it. It's because then you don't get to have these kind of conversations. But if the main character is in universe and it's a stop story, then the objective story is in a horizontal relationship. They're both in the same, either external or internal. If it's a start story, then it would be this vertical relationship where the main character through line is in situation and the objective story is in psychology or manipulation.
Yeah, that makes me definitely think it's manipulation then, because I forgot about that. Because he definitely feels like the start dynamic way more so than a stop. And because I was initially thinking that he was probably fixed attitude because actually, I don't know, because he definitely seems like he's more in a situation. I just didn't really see the doer aspect as much, so I was kind of thinking he might not land there, but no, that totally makes sense now. I think yeah.
Relationship grows by virtue of the things they either do for each other or not do for each other. Like I killed her for
that's a good
for me, right? You know, like I didn't ask you to do that. Yes, you know, all of these fours, like understanding, doing, obtaining, gathering information. As opposed to the other four down here, which are developing a plan, playing a role, changing one's nature, and conceiving an idea. So, like for the sister, when she's like, oh, and she sees him freaking out, right? Is it hard for her to learn that, like physically learn it, like going to school and learning the information? Or is it that she's starting to get an idea that, holy crap, they're together, and then she sees the Bruno starting to put all the pieces together. That's what's creating the conflict for everybody in the objective story. So I would say, yeah, the objective story here, main character, situation, relationship, story, activity, and then Bruno in fixed attitude.
So then genre-wise, it's not an action thriller, it's a psychological thriller.
That's a great way to think of it. And what would you say if you were to like, oh, was it a cool psychological thriller or was it a cool action thriller?
Yeah, okay, I got you.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice cheating way to get into it. All right, so then now the fun part. What about the concerns? So for those who don't know how to do this manually, then looking in the 4 through lines, you're going to have concerns that are all in the same relative position within the through line. So if one through line is about the past, then the other 3 are going to be about understanding, developing a plan, and memories. If one's present, the other one's going to be about gathering information, conceiving an idea, contemplations, and so on. So in the same way that you were to put the 4 through lines in there, how would you see the 4 concerns? Which group seems the best?
And I'll take a stab at it. Future, obtaining, changing one's nature, and innermost desires.
Okay. So then for Guy, why is the future a problem for him?
I would like to retract my statement. I see something better as soon as it came out of my mouth.
I'm almost
thought
wondering
it
if
was-
it's
it
Oh, wait,
was
no, wait,
he
go,
was
go.
constantly worried about whether or not, like, what was going to happen. But I think it's possibly more how things are changing.
Okay. So progress or how things are changing for him.
I almost wonder if it could be present, because it seems like the situation would be resolved in the future as soon as he's like proven innocent, kind of, or not. I guess it would be like conceiving. I guess it'd be conceiving an idea and gathering information. I don't know. This one's hard for me to. I don't have like a strong feeling. I could also kind of see how things are changing, but it doesn't really seem like things are changing all that much. At least it kind of feels like there's a murder that happens, and then everything kind of feels stuck there, at least to me.
So which through line are we changing? Which through line are we working on now?
So we're trying to look and find the 4 concerns for all 4 through lines at once.
Okay. And changing one's nature is, oh, okay. I was, my screen wasn't showing all 4. Okay.
I think it's past understanding memories and developing a plan.
Okay. And now we'll go through-
Which is very different, I think, than what other people were saying. But I'm thinking about Bruno, and he's all about, remember I did this for you. Remember I just killed this lady. And then the whole story is about developing a plan to murder my father, or developing a plan to escape the police so that I can track down Bruno. And then the main character is, I thought past, just because of his wife. He was very concerned about his wife, the situation with his wife, and that kind of led into all the things. And then I don't know. I thought understanding just because for the relationship, because they were sort of peeling back the layers of who they were as people underneath it all. And Guy it took Guy a few tries to understand that Bruno had some psychological things he was dealing with. But then Bruno also helped Guy understand his own inner nature of like being kind of actually wanting to kill somebody like that's there inside of him. So that's what I think.
Okay, so activity, what is that? The main character, impact character through line?
Oh, wow. No, we're like way beyond that. So,
Okay,
yeah, we're already on to the concerns. So,
right,
Teresa
right,
just,
right.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, okay.
yeah, Teresa just said, main character concern in the past, relationship story concern in understanding, objective story concern in developing a plan, and then influence character concern in memories. And then we also have an advocate, I think, for maybe progress, although I didn't hear about doing, being, and impulsive responses. And then another one that was thrown out there was sort of present, learning, conceiving idea, and contemplations. And then the only one that was left was the one Lloyd started out with, but then he tossed that one away, which was changing. And
I'm not sure about this, but I'll just throw it out that Bruno always is telling people, anyone who will listen, hey, I have an idea for this. He's always conceiving ideas for stuff. And, for Guy, it's the present danger scenario that he's in. Gathering information, I'm not exactly, I guess, oh, are you Miriam? And then for Guy, he gets the layout of the father's place. But contemplations, is you would think that more, Bruno is more innermost desires or impulsive responses than contemplations. But what's another word for contemplations?
like thinking things through, weighing the pros and cons of stuff, just getting people to
Mulling things over.
He doesn't really feel that. He doesn't really feel that impulsive to me. He feels more calculated, I guess. I don't know.
I always think of him as innermost desires.
Yeah.
Because he's filled with dreaming and hoping and denial and looking for closure that doesn't happen. But
all right, so we have everything.
One thing that I'll say for Guy, and one of the aspects that he changes is he does become more like Bruno in the sense of sneaking around, conniving, playing the role of the criminal, breaking into the father's place. I mean, he would never have done that prior to, he's sort of playing the role of murderer at one point as one of the things that he does. And then you would put Bruno in impulsive responses, which might be more interesting. And then they're doing as a relationship, they're each. I don't know. I'm just putting it out there.
So let's look at the objective story plot. So since everybody likes all of them, whatever one is the objective story concern also becomes the goal of the story. So either the goal of the story is developing a plan, playing a role, changing one's nature, or conceiving an idea. And we know that goal is resolved. So for Teresa, what is developing a plan? How would you see that as the goal of the story?
That was developing the plan of how to murder the wife, how to murder the father, and then how to defeat Bruno in his attempt to sabotage with the lighter.
Okay. So that would be developing a plan as the objective story. How about for those who liked playing a role or being as the objective story? How do you see that as being what is going on as far as how are things resolved through being? Okay, we'll come back to that one. How about changing one's nature? How are things resolved through changing one's nature? How is that the source of the problem in the objective story?
The reason that I liked that one is because Bruno is consistently attempting to get Guy to change his nature, to become a murderer.
Mhm.
I'm not sure it's right, but that's why I jumped on that one initially.
It's definitely manipulation for sure. The question is it the changing of one's nature that is what's problematic? Like people changing who they are for everybody. Because you want to look at what's a problem for everybody. Is everybody changing who they are? Are they all growing up? Are they all changing, transforming? Are they all getting married? Are they all moving off to a different country? Like that would be a becoming objective story. And then I'm not sure how that would end up, when you see the lighter, that resolves it, how that kind of fits into becoming or changing one's nature.
Doesn't.
I
So
think
then
this
the
is,
last one is conceiving an idea.
yeah, I was thinking like, what a way to think about like the initial problem, if it were this, be like, oh, I came up with the idea of the perfect murder, and then it's like once that idea is like implanted in the brain that something has to be done about it. I don't know.
That's
So the coming up with the idea is conceiving.
Yeah,
Well, how hard was that to come up with it?
that's a good point. So like, yeah, but developing the planet, I mean, it doesn't really even feel like they do that either.
What about, let's take Teresa's favorite scene of the couch.
I do love that scene.
Out of all four of these, I think conceptualizing, which is what's really here, not so much, if you just think of a plan, it's not so much the idea of killing, because the old lady gets over that really quick. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I could never do that. Oh, that sounds amazing. Well, how would I do it? So then it's like, how do I put all the pieces together? He's like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And then, oh, that sounds amazing. Is it okay if I put my hands around your neck? Oh, I would love that. Like, that would be conceptualizing. And then if you think of it, I always think of the difference between conceptualizing and conceiving. Conceiving is like the original, is just a puzzle piece, right? Whereas the conceptualizing is how do all those pieces fit together? So at the end, what resolves it is when they see the final piece and they're like, oh, okay, this is what was going on. All right, you're free to go. So it's this plan at the beginning, not so much developing it, because I mean, it does get developed over time through the story, but it's kind of like, hey, I could do this, we could do this. I scratched your back, you scratch mine. And he's like, okay, which is kind of like his passive doer, like, sure, whatever, bud. And then he's like, cool.
Well,
I
isn't that whole scene that you are relating with the old ladies and so forth, isn't that playing a role?
Well, no, because how hard was it for anybody? Were the old ladies trying to be something they weren't? And
Well, I mean, the murder thing and, playing that they were planning a murder and
but I think it's not that the roles that they were playing were problematic. It was coming up with all the different ways that they could off their husband.
okay.
The being is like Tootsie or something where you're passing yourself off as somebody else and pretending to be
Okay.
somebody different, and that's the whole story. There's
Okay.
definite elements of that in the story, but I think if you looked at it in terms of conceptualizing and what the objective story is, which is this plan, it's essentially like how to get away with murder. And he does, even though he didn't actually do it. But Guy does get away with his wife getting murdered.
Would a way to think about the relationship, if it were this, then an understanding be like that there's like a misunderstanding of what the nature of the relationship would be like, because we think we're friends, but we're not really friends, or we think we're co-conspirators, I'm not really on the same team kind of idea then.
Totally. It's a total
Okay.
misunderstanding at the very beginning. And
Okay.
like, get away from me. Oh, cool. I get to go kill her for you. We're buddies. Like, that's the relationship. Is this misunderstanding between the learning doesn't, because it's like, sure, he learns about it. The relationship, well, there is a stage where learning about it and finding out like what's actually going on becomes problematic. It's like a stepping stone, because the concerning one, it's like what is going on throughout the entire story. You know, and essentially, I've got you under my thumb. Understanding. Doing would be if it was hard for them to, if they were, I was like climbing a mountain or going on a race. If there's like a relay race, doing it, getting the timing right, actually physically doing the things would be part of the relationship story, if that's what it explored the whole time. But I think there's like a communication issue. Memories. So Bruno, truth, evidence, suspicion, and falsehood. He lies his ass off. He knows the truth. He has the evidence. And he can make anybody, he can make, what's his name, a suspect. And definitely the memory of like, oh, I killed her, like that keeps coming back up. So then past might be like, well, but wait, like what kind of past does he have? There is a little moment where he's like, well, that's what you get for going out on your wife. He's like, hey, I don't like to talk about that. Or, it's like, there is some bad blood between him and his wife there. Fate, that's the funny bookend mark where, he knocks shoes with what's his name in that thing. He's like, I'm out of here. Interdiction, he tries to do things to change it around. Prediction and destiny, like where he's headed towards it. The destiny with the wife brings up for sure.
Well, yeah, I feel like he's destined for jail unless he solves the problem, right?
Yeah, for sure. Or yeah, or he's on this train. He's on the train to, was it destiny or was it fate that he ran into this guy? Interesting.
Are you asking us or just?
I was being clever.
Oh, okay.
Only because I know in Inception, destiny is his main character issue, and that's you're on a train and it's headed. So I was like, oh, that's kind of the same idea because he's on a train.
Okay.
So then with past understanding, developing a plan, and memories, and yeah, they put all the pieces together at the end. That's why it's a success. I like to skip past the issues and go right to the element. So we have these 16 here in the under developing a plan. We have knowledge, thought, inertia, change, actuality, perception, order, chaos, ability, desire, projection, speculation, aware, self-aware, equity, and inequity. One of these is going to be both the problem of the objective story and also Guy's problem. We know he changes, so the one that's opposite that problem is both going to be the thing that he moves into as his solution, and it also resolves the objective story plot. So, anybody have any ideas of what pairs stand out as being what the story is really about?
I could maybe see ability and desire with having the desire to kill, having the ability to kill, like that seems like it could be there. It seems kind of simple, but
Okay, so desirability might be a pair. How about some other pairs?
I mean, maybe actuality perception, but I don't know if I see too much of that other than, I mean, I guess I'm thinking I should be looking at the OS, right?
I would look, I mean, it's nice because it's a
Or,
chain story, so it's both. You're gonna get,
okay.
you know, if I bring it out a little bit, let's see if I can go a little bit. I don't know if it's too small. It might be too small.
Jim, I think I'm not familiar enough with the elements. Which ones? Maybe I'm thinking projection, speculation. I don't know which ones, because it's about. I don't know if I'm taking the Dramatica term or the term in my head, but like speculation, like who did it, or I'm just thinking of the story ends when the speculation resolves.
So a speculation problem story would be everybody's always speculating all the different possibilities that could possibly be going on, and that's what's causing.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I could also see inertia and change with like, no, we can change the circumstances, you know. And I could also see inequity and inequity of like, well, no, I killed him, so now you owe me. You know, there's a lot of that.
But isn't
So
it
I'm all over the place.
isn't it a situation until he opens up his hand and reveals the evidence to prove the innocence?
It could be. So instead of a question like what specifically is the issue of situation? And what are the elements underneath? Like what is the thing that's actually driving
Chaos and order.
chaos and order? So which one's the problem?
Chaos.
Chaos. How is chaos a problem in the story?
Things keep tumbling around, not as expected.
Okay, that's kind of general. How about we're gonna keep going back to the old ladies on the couch.
Oh,
When you-
okay. Well, the murder happens, and then the other thing that doesn't happen, and the tennis game doesn't go. You know, it becomes more chaotic.
So this isn't becomes more chaotic, it's that things are motivated by chaos. So randomness and things getting all out of nowhere, random things that are happening is the actual problem in the story. And that I'm pretty sure it's
I
not a
see.
random.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. What about old ladies on the couch?
See,
What do you
that's why I think it's ability and desire too.
Oh.
Actually, I don't know. I think because that whole conversation was about you have the desire in you. Everybody has the desire in you. That's not the problem. You need to know how to do it. You need everybody. You know, you need to know the right ability to do it. And I kind of thought that the main character he was coming from a place of he has the desire in him and he's suppressing that. But the obstacle character is all like, everybody has the ability, so why don't we all just do it?
Okay. And then so if desire is the problem, that would mean the solution is ability. So how does that play into? I think that's what you're saying is desire is the problem, right?
Yeah, I guess. No, I think the now I'm crisscrossed. I think that yeah, I guess that is what I'm saying, but now that I'm thinking about it, that doesn't make sense. It must be switched. But I just always thought about the main character as having this desire in him that he was suppressing.
I almost wonder, could it maybe be thought and then the solution of knowledge? Like the
Okay.
problem with the thought of we need to kill them, and then the knowledge, like figuring out what actually happened. And that also feels like actuality perception, but at least actuality feels like the truth, but perception doesn't really feel like, unless it's like not getting caught, and that's I don't know.
Oh, you
I'm
know
like,
what?
I'm
I'll
really bad at
argue
this.
actuality
I-
perception, because it's the perception as to whether or not he's guilty and the actuality that he's not. I'll make that argument.
But how are the cops having a trouble or an issue with perception? Like how they're seeing
They
things.
think he's guilty.
Do they though? I think they're not until like later on.
Okay.
Well, they have a line where it's like something funny is up, you know.
Well, Guy has motive. He has desire. Same thing with Bruno. They both have desire, and but Guy doesn't have the ability to do it. Well, wait. He actually. I said this earlier. He sort of takes on some of the characteristics of like sort of what a killer, how a killer would actually behave, and he kind of learns, or he starts to become sort of, you know, like a killer, because he's breaking into a house and he's outwitting his opponent. He's, you know, he's sort of thinking like he's getting a greater sense of self. He's
Maybe not like a killer, but maybe he has to be on this other person's platform, you know, in order to defeat him.
Right. So let's try a different way. Well, I think
I
Teresa
think
had
it's aware, self-aware,
okay, so why do you think it's
but I don't know
aware-
which one's which. I think it's aware, self-aware, because in the end, I guess, in the end, they all become aware of what's going on. So that
Okay.
would mean that Guy is self-aware because he's really focused on his own problem. I thought it was the other way though. I thought Guy was more aware of everything around him because he didn't want to rock the boat. But again, I don't know. Now I'm taking that back. Sorry guys, I'm thinking out loud. Bruno was actually aware because he was the one who was like, well, if you do this and that, then the police are going to suspect you. Ha ha ha. And then, but Guy was only thinking about how do I get out of it? So that's what I think.
Do you think that problem is self-aware and the solution is aware?
That's what I think.
So
I would
then
not stake my life on it.
that would mean, okay, so then if it's self-aware, that means the focus would be equity and the direction would be inequity.
Oh yeah, I don't know how that works.
Or Guy, if it was self-aware, his focus would be projection and his direction would be speculation. And his issue would be destiny. I mean, they do become aware at the end. I just don't know. Oops, nope. No. Go back. And then for Bruno, equity, inequity, that feels okay. His drive would be speculation. And then for the relationship, the problem would be chaos. Maybe.
Would it be helpful at all to look at the concern level? And no. I feel
I
like
mean,
we're
if-
bouncing around a lot. I just don't know.
If you look at the issues, it's either circumstances and situation or state of being and sense of self.
Yeah. I mean, it feels kind of more situation-y or circumstance-y, maybe, than a sense of. But again, it's like, it's hard for me to do this. I think the further in you go, the harder it is for me to really feel confident about anything.
Let's see what else we got. Aware, self-aware. It was sense. Let's see.
You know, it could be equity, inequity. Well, it could be all of them, right? But because Bruno says we won't gotta make it even Steven.
Okay, that's
Like
great.
the crisscross is all about even Steven. That's all about equity. And then the inequity would be you did it, but I'm not gonna balance that equation because that's not right. Could be something like that.
I don't know if the only problem with that is I don't know if he really changes that position by the end. He feels like he still maintains that to me. But I do feel like there's a lot of that conversation. So maybe that like would be like, could that be focused in direction if they're kind of talking a lot around that? I don't know.
All right, let's do this. We're gonna take a 5-minute break. I had no idea I was gonna be doing this, so I have to go to the bathroom. So you can look at this, and without me pushing everything, you guys can talk about it amongst yourselves. I will be back in less than 5 minutes, and then we can talk about what it is. Let me do stop my. I'll just mute it. I'll be right back.
You know, I could actually see Guy being inequity to start with, switching to equity, because at the beginning, he's being treated unfairly by his wife.
That's a good point.
That makes sense. So what are the other options that we're supposed to consider?
I think pretty much all of them were kind of going around, all of them up in the developing a plan.
But I mean, which through line are we?
Well, I
and
guess
which-
it's gonna be the overall story, but it's also gonna map to because of it's a change story. It's gonna map to
The main character.
the main character and the obstacle character where they are, and it's so you're gonna see echoes of it across like pretty much the whole story. So that makes it a little harder, I guess, too. Sometimes it can make it easier. I don't know. I struggled the most with the elements, I think, and the other parts, through lines up getting better at. Used to be, and I still do struggle with them, but it used to be a lot harder for me to even just identify like the domain levels.
So the manipulation is the overall story.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, the other reason I'm thinking it could actually be he switches from inequity to equity is because when he plays tennis, he like what was I gonna say here? He's sort of settling the score in the tennis match, and then at the end he's sort of settling the score with Bruno. and everybody's trying to seek a stability in what's going on with the crime. But I could just be grasping at straws right now too.
Has anybody found this technique useful for actual writing, rewriting, or purely for critique?
Oh, it's really good to propel writing. You know, what it is, you just put it aside and then just write, you know, it gets you going. Or it maintains the story that you've had for a very long time. And then another piece comes, and that's another part of the story. Oh, I can have that with it also.
Yeah, though I think because obviously the films, or most of the time that we're analyzing, aren't written with anything like Dramatica in mind. But usually, like if a film stands the test of time or something like that, there's something, not always, but it feels like there can be something under the surface. And I'd like to maybe get Jim's input on this, but one thought I had was, I don't know if you guys have ever seen those like where they cut out a bunch of words from like, and they have like a template that goes like over it, so you get like a cutout, like a word cutout sort of thing. I've seen like things with spies, they'll do that to send like coded messages or whatever. But I almost feel like what we're trying to do is like figure out what template we could like overlay it that like we're seeing the most words coming through it. I don't know. Does that idea make any sense, Jim?
Yeah.
Or would you agree with that at all?
Well, I just came back. Thank you for putting up with that. I was hoping we'd get to it earlier, but it's a little more difficult. So I could not wait any longer. So Jonathan asks, if there's debate, ambiguity, does it mean the storyteller didn't quite think through to this level of detail and it's not quite a complete story? I would say sometimes that's the case. You know, if there isn't, some stories, there won't be a really clear indication of the plot, or there won't be a clear indication of the theme. I think this one's pretty clear. Like, there is a problem, there is a solution that brings everything to a close. It's just a matter of making all the different pieces connect all at once. So I don't know, when I was gone, did everybody come up with a solution? Did Teresa come up with it?
I did have one more I could throw out. Maybe I did already. I can't remember. But inertia to hinge kind of feels like, because it kind of described the passive nature to the more active nature. No sense, right? I don't know.
Yeah, inertia would be keeping things going, and then change is like constantly changing everything.
Okay. Well, constantly, maybe not. Doesn't really describe it, because I could maybe see like we're going to change our circumstances. Again, that's kind of vague. Even.
Well, okay. So nobody came up with anything while we were gone?
I thought, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say we kind of like bounced a couple things around. I don't know if we really came to any consensus.
Well, as far as the overall story, it starts with his inertia, Guy, and then it ends with knowledge when the hand is opened and they have the knowledge through the evidence of his innocence. Lots of thought in between.
Yeah, there's a
A
couple
lot
reasons.
of change.
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why that doesn't work, because they've got to be deposed and all that stuff. I think Guy starts as inequity, being treated unfairly, and Bruno is equality. Make it even Stevens crisscross. Does he say crisscross? Is that why you keep saying that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a theme.
Yeah, they say it a couple times, I think.
Oh, okay. So I will show you how I did it, and then we can come back to it, because we actually ended up where I actually thought. So that's a good sign. Because I was trying not to push it, but my thought as I was watching was like, oh, this is it. So the first thing I thought of was understanding like misunderstandings. I was like, oh, clearly. And psychological thrillers, Hitchcock, that kind of stuff are typically in this upper left-hand corner genre-wise. So I try not to think of it that way, but it's really clearly like the misunderstandings of it. And then out of these four, I actually thought interpretation was the actual issue between them. Because it's like, wait, I thought we had a deal out of all these. Sure, there's like instinct, and somebody brought up like how their relationship brought out their worst instincts and that kind of stuff. I don't think there's a lot of conditioning. Like, if there's any kind of problem, it would be interpretation. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the problem and solution of the relationship story are under interpretation, but it does mean that the objective story issue will be in the same location. That's how it works here behind the scenes to keep it all thematically consistent. So that would mean circumstances. And circumstances, I think, is an issue for everybody in the story, and it works really, really well. Particularly with Teresa's like favorite old ladies on the couch. Because it's like, are you really happy with your husband? Oh, yes, I am. Well, wouldn't it be cool to kill him? Oh, yeah, I guess it would be. It's like, whoa, like that was a quick switch. And in the circumstances of they have, he's hooked up with the senator's daughter. There's all of the sort of emotional circumstances with Bruno and his mom, and then the relationship between him and the two of them and their dad, and he can't stand to be with him. I think out of all of these, sense of self, maybe a little bit, but I actually think that's something closer to self-aware than sense of self, because those are kind of similar. Like you can kind of see where that would be a similar sort of thing between the two different levels. But clearly the situation, like you put me in this bad situation, and then the emotional circumstances of it. And my first one was inequity as being the problem, because it's murder. So another way to look at inequity is murder, mayhem. Actually, mayhem is probably more chaos. Something unjust, and then equity is justice. So at the end, the justice is served because we find out how all the pieces fit back together. And then Teresa's thing here, which is great, which is the being treated unfairly from his wife, which would be up here. So he would have inequity. And then his solution at the end would be some sort of fairness, how it just works out peacefully. And he didn't really have to do anything. But he's gotten rid of this sort of inequity of a wife who is still going to mess around on him, even though she's pregnant with somebody else's baby. He has no ability. I wish I could strangle her, but I guess I'll just deal with that in my own certain way and lessen my desire, just express it in other ways, or go fulfill my passions with this other woman. But he's not actually, because he doesn't feel like he can actually do something about it. And then the nice thing about that is if it's inequity and equity for the problem solution, the focus is on awareness, like, hey, they're going to find out about it, to self-aware, which again is the women on the couch, like, oh, you are the kind of person that would be into murder. And then if you take that over to Bruno, that works really well because he will have the same focus and direction because he's the steadfast character. But then what drives him is desire. So, I mean, yeah, he's completely nuts and wants to kill anything his dad and projects that onto other people. And lastly, and so then what happens is evidence won't be his issue, but sorry about that. Because the main character's issue is interdiction, things are going a bad way, and whether or not he's going to do anything about it, and he finally does do something about it, then Bruno would have the same location for his. So his is suspicion. And everybody, the suspicion of like, oh, are they hooked up together? Are they working together? Is this like, why, how does he know him? All this kind of stuff. And then lastly, because it's a success story, the relationship story will share the same focus and direction, which means that the problem in the relationship is perception. Like, oh, I thought you really wanted this. And everybody else perceiving that the two of these are working together for murder. And then that's what their relationship is all about, until at the end when you find out actually what was going on between the two of them. And then that would get you the whole story form. So if I were to build it here.
So where is it with the guy giving Bruno back the gun, passively giving him back the gun that he killed somebody with, and giving him the gun, he'd be able to kill somebody else with it rather than give it to the police. And then the policeman shooting the man in the carousel, which caused all that chaos. Where are those in here?
I personally think those have absolutely no impact whatsoever on the meaning of the story. Like those are just like random events that aren't tied together.
That he put in just to get people's attention to look at the screen?
I don't even know. I can't.
Okay.
Like what we're doing here is the story form. So like thematically, what are the problems and the solutions, and how do those all kind of
Right. So
together?
those two things had nothing to do with the story form.
Yeah, as far as I can tell.
Okay, good to know.
So let's see, mail change, success, good. Right, so this is strangers on a train. And so I'm just building this the modern way, because I don't know if this one has been made before.
Jim, can you screen share what you're doing?
Yes, I was just finishing it up, sorry. It is done. Give me 1 second just to pull it up. All right. How am I gonna do this? Oh, let's do this.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I did have this thought that those two things had nothing to do with, they came out of nowhere. So that was interesting.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Okay. So let me share. This is the story form. Oh. All right. So have the main character in universe, the relationship story in physics, objective story down here in psychology, the obstacle character, influence character in mind, that's Bruno. And then the four dynamics that we have here, the changed resolve, which are the bookends that we talked about, the fact that he kind of grows into taking action. He's a doer, male mental sex, then action, space-time, which is option locked, success, good. And then these are how they all play out. So you'll see again, this is what I was saying. So if the inequity is what's driving it, that, you know, if you look at to what's his wife, totally unfair, totally inequitable. And that's driving everything. And she's like, oh, what are you going to do about it? Right? You're just going to take care of it and you're just going to deal with it. And then also that he's dealing with it there, and then the solution of equity. So his unique ability is destiny, which I guess would be, I mean, he's on this path and he's inevitably destined to have to deal with it one way or another. But the critical flaw is that he holds back the truth. I do like Bruno's unique ability is all the falsehood, all the lies. how it's so easy for him to go into any kind of situation, any kind of place, and just completely lie to people, and they just totally buy into it. Critical flaw, fate, like he's walking and somebody bumps into him and then the lighter falls through a crack. That's like total fate, which
That was-
undermines his ability.
That was great. That really was like, I did not see that coming.
And
Oh,
it
he
was
didn't either.
tense. It was like, oh Jesus. I guess maybe the catalyst of conditioning might be in the relationship story as they get more and more closer to each other and they become more familiar or more habituated to what the other person's all about. You will see the benchmark for all of them are in that right-hand corner. So for those of you who are like, oh, I think it's conceiving, it could be present, could be learning, that's more what they're aware of throughout the course of the story. So then a lot of times it can be easy to confuse the benchmark with the actual concern. And the concern is where the actual problem is coming from. And the benchmark is like how you measure how that's grown through time. And I do love sense of self here as the catalyst for the objective story. And then instinct as the inhibitor.
I think conditioning makes sense in the relationship story because Guy figured out what Bruno's plan was because of their interactions together. Because they had they had like, because its response is based on training or conditioning, right? So based on all their past interactions, then Guy was able to, when, oh, I can't remember her name, Anne, the girlfriend, came to him and said, this is what Bruno said to me, then Guy was like, oh, I know what he's going to do because of all those past interactions together.
Yeah, that would actually make sense. So he knows like what's coming up. And the learning at the end, like I'm going to tell everybody what's going on. They're all going to learn that you're behind it. Whereas it started off with, hey, let's do some murders together. He kills her. All the misunderstandings of like, what are you talking about? We were totally in on this together. Then I'm going to kill you. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to go tell your father, trying to like break up. And then eventually the learning there at the end. Progress, future, present, past. Progress is definitely, I can't get rid of my wife. Future, I'm going to end up in jail. Present,
Tennis.
and then past is, I guess, being absolved of the past of what he had done, but then also, I mean, it's all behind him now. And then I would say here, conceptualizing is the original plan. The different ideas of how they're going to actually work their way out of the plan. This is all the, once it's revealed, actually, I think isn't the midpoint when Anne finds out that they know each other. And so then now there's all the pretending that's going on there that then leads to, now this would be the changing of the nature where he's like in the tennis match, like, wow, he's never been like this before. All of a sudden he's taking action and trying to finish it off early. And then Bruno, memory, I hate my dad. Preconscious. I mean, I guess he does kill her, and then afterwards it's kind of a lunatic. Here he might be angry, and I don't know what this is, like making people conscious of what's actually going on behind the scenes. This would be the part where I wouldn't probably go further than this. It's like what Jonathan was saying, like, well, is the whole story form here? I mean, it's pretty close. I think out of all the different combinations of story forms that you get, this would be the closest to the one that is the Strangers on a Train story form, which is murder, which is the inequity, total classic sort of 1940s, 1950s, somebody in a bad situation. And then at the end, some kind of justice is served and the bad guy is caught and put away or killed and everything works out. Even Steven for everybody. crisscross applesauce.
So will you say again, one more time, the goal of the movie and whether it was success or not?
So for conceptualizing, I would think of it as, objectively speaking, how can you get away with murdering your wife? So the goal is not necessarily a character's conscious goal, although typically it is like, I want to go rescue the princess or I want to go get the reward. It's what is everybody working towards, because it's also the concern. There is some sort of inequity in that. So there's a problem with planning. Like, hey, no, we planned this. No, I didn't plan this. And then the cops, like, what is going on here? Who is behind this? Doesn't make any sense that she would just be strangled here. And then the husband is supposedly on a train, but he's not on a train because the other guy is drunk. So being drunk and not being able to point out that, yes, I was there, that's inequity. That's like, he was drunk, he was out of it. So to get back to your question for the goal, so then being able to put all those pieces together to put the plan back together so you can see how everything relates and why all this stuff happened. That's usually why psychological thrillers are in this area, because they're either going to be, well, the psychological thriller part, it's going to be who murdered and how are we going to put all the pieces together. The more action thriller are the understandings and then chasing down, car chases and all that kind of stuff before you can get to understand exactly who is behind it all. So like this is more Usual Suspects would be something that's up here. Whereas more of the Hitchcock stuff is some dastardly scheme has been put into play, and how are we going to resolve it and bring it to a success, is when all the pieces fit together nice and easy, justice is served, and then all the inequities that were there are kind of put aside. This one's interesting because it's an inequity that's about inequity. So the inequity itself is about things being out of balance. One person thinking one thing, although I guess that's probably more up here. One person thinking one thing and somebody perceiving something else. Does that answer your question?
Mhm.
Does that help? Okay,
Yep.
cool. Yeah, and then the consequence, if they failed, then it would have been a complete misunderstanding. They would have understood that Guy is the one that was behind it all. And then look, we found, if he was able to put that piece back, put the lighter back on the island, then that would have kept the inequity going, because that would be totally unfair and not right. And it would be an anomaly, like an inequity is an anomaly, like, oh, there's this A to G thing, you're A, your girlfriend's A, you're G. So we misunderstand you as being the bad guy behind it. And then that would be Strangers on a Train.
So the actually the carousel guy accidentally getting killed and everything became chaos on the with the carousel ride, that would fit in as a problem in equity.
I don't know. That's kind of a
No.
random thing. Yeah. Like I said, I don't think that
Like
has any.
objective story.
So
Okay.
a really important thing is not everything in a film or a book has to be about the story form. You can have stuff
Okay.
that has nothing to do with the story form and is just there to make it super exciting. So like the old Carney, like making his way through there, like that's not really a part of this, really. But it's super cool. It makes it way more exciting. Tennis match, maybe its ability and desire, it has a little bit less to do with it. But you can have, just like in real life, where there's all this stuff that happens that really has no meaning whatsoever, you can also have that in a film or any kind of story that you're telling. And you'll know it's meaningless because if you pull it out, it won't affect the meaning of the story. It'll still say the same. So if that guy hadn't shot him and they found some other way to make the carousel go fast, it wouldn't have changed the meaning of the story. It's not a part of the story form. So this is specifically the meaning of it. To what extent you want to like go through and illustrate it is totally up to the author. And then you can always throw in stuff that has nothing to do with it. You don't want to have too much of that noise because then it'll be like so confusing. You're not even going to be able to tell what's going on. But you can always have, like pops and cracks in the analog record to make it seem a little bit more realistic. More real to life, not realistic, more true to life.
I had a thought, like, because someone was asking, like how is this, like, what, like the difference between kind of analyzing versus like writing and stuff. Because my kind of thought was like, sort of what we're doing when we're analyzing is like we're taking like a filter kind of thing and looking at the whatever the text is and just trying to find like whichever filter that we have that like the most text shows through and like is illustrated, because a lot of it otherwise would just get filtered out, right? And we would see it as noise if it wasn't connected. Is that a fair way to think about it?
That's a great way to think about it. Yeah, for sure. Because it's like Hitchcock trying to communicate this, right? Not necessarily that he was thinking of a story form, but the parts that come through, like you're saying, the filter, there is one filter that's like, oh, that one seems to be the closest. I see a lot more stuff connecting the author with me. That's why in these analyses, it's like, oh, okay, why is it change? Why is it steadfast? Okay, the more points you have in there, that filter, you can see more through to the other side, because it's really just like the veil between the author and the audience and how it's communicating a story or some sort of meaning to whoever it is that they're communicating it through. And so how well the story form, the hologram of the story form is visible is how much easier it is for the author to communicate to the audience what it is that they're trying to say. That's a great way to think of it. Yeah, for sure. Because we're doing it after the fact. And that's why currently, you have to know your story form before you get started, right? And learn as much as you can about it to then be able to build that story. I think pretty sooner than later, you can just start, and if you change your story form halfway through, you can have it all shifted for you, and you don't have to worry about going back in and rewriting stuff. So you can kind of discover the story form as you go. Certainly, the better idea you have of where everything is, then you can save yourself having to shift everything over when it comes time for that. Excellent. All right. So I think next.
I think you're muted, Michael, if you're trying to say something.
Tim, could I ask you you said if we had questions, I could, if we're finished talking about this particular story. I was talking to Sandy a little while back, and we're talking about the you and I conversation, and I know you're Mr. You and I expert. Can you just clarify for me? I'm having a problem understanding the logic behind it. You got the main, let's say it's a change main character, right? And the influence character saying to him, you and I are a lot alike, and the main character is like, no, we're not, I'm nothing like you. And then at the end of the day, the change character is adopting a trait that is represented by the influence character. So I'm a little confused as to what's the what's happening and what's the purpose of it? Because I'm a little confused as to, I'm not like you, except I'm going to adopt a trait that's just like you.
It's not so much I'm going to adopt a trait like you. So that's probably an incorrect way of thinking about it. Although I can see where you're getting that from. At its very base form, the you and I are both alike are just, this is the main character, this is the obstacle character. Like literally you and I. So it's just a quick shorthand way for the author to establish the through lines. Whether or not they mean to on purpose or not, that's what they're doing. So this is literally the I perspective is the main character, the you perspective is the obstacle character. That's all you need to make that work at a macro level, at the biggest level. The we're both alike is on this axis, it's static. So universe and mind are static. That's where you're getting we're alike. If it was the other way, physics and psychology are a process. So that's where it's alike. I'm nothing like you is one is external and one is internal. So that's also where that conversation is coming from. So that can give you clues as to like how to make that, how to expose that. Then the way that you can get down to the micro level of it is that the you and I argument is the two pivotal elements, which are the connection point between character and plot. So I have them marked here. You can see main character, pivotal, and an obstacle character. So in this case, yes, the main character does take on that equity, but it's not like the same. It's not Bruno's version of equity. It's equity, but it's like a completely different storytelling. So I wouldn't make it that they take that other person's. It's not like he becomes crazy at the end, right? And is completely obsessed with making everything even Steven. So the you and I both alike is really just once you have the through lines, and then in particular, one's external, one's internal, and they're both either static or both either process.
Okay, and it's not. The change is elemental, but it's not. You're saying it doesn't have to be precisely the same interpretation of the element.
Yeah, so like for this film, you and I are both alike. We both would love to kill. We both have shitty situations. Which is like, yeah, you're stuck in this situation where you have a wife that's cheating on you and is pregnant with some other guy's kid. I'm just nuts and I'm obsessed with killing my dad. We're exactly the same. Or I hate my dad, right? I'm nothing like you. I would never do anything like that. And then he's like, oh yeah? Like, let me see if I can manipulate you into doing that kind of thing. Like, not sure how that would play out, but I mean, he's much more, I would not do that. And he's able to get people to do things. He manipulates an old lady to let him put his hands around her neck so that he can show her how much fun it is to like not be able to scream. She's like, what? So there might be that conversation, and they might have something kind of like that in the beginning where it's almost like, hey, we're just the same, you know, we both have the.
Does the conversation usually though occur in the third act generally?
It's where you won't find it in like a particular place, and you can't look at the story form to see where it is, because it really is just this relationship that's at the core of it. You can kind of get to a little bit more of what it's about here if you wanted to. You know, if you wanted to write it, you know, I would say I'm willing to put up with inequities no matter what. I'm not going to do anything about it. Whereas I like to make everything fair and even. They would go back and forth as to what that is like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you see, what's funny too is that you see that conversation in like a lot of movies. I think more just like the hero and the villain have that argument, whether or not they're actually would really be the obstacle character. So you get a lot of like kind of scenes where you have that happening, and it doesn't really serve any purpose. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think that happens actually in How to Train Your Dragon. It's like, oh, me and Toothless, we're so much alike. It's like, what? That's the wrong person to have that conversation with. So it kind of feels a little bit off. I don't think it works. Whereas I don't know if anybody's watching Beef on Netflix, which is.
I'm watching, don't spoil it. I only just finished episode 1 and it was really good.
Holy Moses. Yes, that will
Yes, don't spoil it. No spoilers.
be like 3 in, but there's a great, very sophisticated main character, obstacle character. Whoa. You want to see some talent? It's phenomenal. So next month is Booksmart, which is a really fun indie film. 2 girls graduating from high school. It's actually really funny. I saw it last year. That's what we'll be doing the second Tuesday of May. And I may be leading it, or Chris may be leading it. I don't know. I'm so happy that I actually watched this. Otherwise, this would have been a lot shorter. I hope I helped answer any questions. If anybody has any other questions, everybody knows how to get a hold of me. Feel free to reach out. And as soon as this is back from Zoom recording, I'll post it, and then you can download it if you want to keep it for your records. Sound good?
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Appreciate all the help, because there's no way I could have done this by myself. So thank you. Have a great night, and then I'll see everybody online or next month. See ya.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.